All right, welcome all to episode 285. Today we're talking post game of Juventus Cagliari, a 1-0 victory to keep the string of Serie A success, at least, of February going. I am Zach stepping in for Farhad to host today's episode, and I'm joined with our good friends Patrick and Damiano. Welcome both of you back. The first time we're talking since, of course, we crashed out of the Champions League. How are you recovering?
Barely. I mean, getting through it, I'm getting through it, but,
Yeah.
not much. Yeah.
It must be said, I didn't, and maybe I'm going to sound like a Debbie Downer here, but I didn't think Juventus were going to go super far in the Champions League. So I think I've come to terms with it relatively quickly. The goal was, top contention in Serie A, right? So for me, I kind of expected, but not expected to happen. So I've made my peace with it and moving on. There are more important fish to fry.
Wait, there's no better salve to losing than winning, right? So that's what we're here to talk about today. Before we jump into the breakdown of today's game, housekeeping, of course, for those who are relatively new to the podcast, welcome. We're extremely active on Instagram, Turn Giant. So please follow us there, engage with the content, reply, send Farhad messages. We love getting questions and messages. We'll respond to, and we love addressing them on the podcast. You can get more information about the podcast at turngiants.com. And if you didn't know, we post all of our episodes now on YouTube. So Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts on Android or Google or whatever the other ones are. I'm not used to hosting, so I don't know the spiel. But YouTube, check us out over there. Definitely give us a follow there as we're trying to restore our numbers back to what they were in years past as we start our new YouTube, or restart, I guess, our new YouTube channel. So we'd really appreciate that as well. Alrighty, with my horribly done housekeeping matters out of the way, let's get to what I'm better at, which is talking Juventus. Today, we had, of course, a game away in Sardinia, a tough place to play. Juventus wins 1-0. Damiano, when I looked at the starting roster today, there were some notable changes, right? We got Yildiz and Dusan back into the starting lineup. It was crazy to me when they said on the broadcast that this is the first Serie A game that Dusan started in 2025, which was just crazy. And then maybe a notable exception to the starting lineup in the midfield, we see the return of the PSV midfield, still absent Thuram. What were your takeaways from the starting roster today?
I mean, I was pretty bummed to not see Thuram and Locatelli. I mean, I felt like they were progressing as a double, and they were making solid progress, but we have not been. I don't know. I feel like these past couple games, Mota doesn't want to play them together for some reason, and then like substitutions also include that too. But that's I mean, I just feel like I want to see them back together playing again. Like they were killing it when they in the midfield there. They were like a rock. I also thought that we're playing McKennie up top. I'm McKennie utility guy. I just don't know if he's burnt out. You know what I mean? You give Nico Gonzalez a rest, okay, but I don't know. I felt like I didn't really feel like he was best utilized today in particular, or it would be nice to give him a break. And then seeing Vlahovic up there, I wasn't too thrilled at first, to be brutally honest. That was not my, not what I really wanted to see. But yeah, I feel like they were, the lineup was a little interesting. What about you, Patrick?
So you mentioned McKennie could use some rest. I think Vlahovic was a player that looked like he was on rest, right? And he was ready and
Yeah.
raring to go.
Oh, man.
For sure.
I have some notes here. I said he played like we expect Kolo Muani to play. He was coming back into midfield. He was spraying passes out. Usually, we've done games where Vlahovic gets like 10 first half touches. This guy was involved. He was coming back in the midfield, like I said. So he looked like a man possessed and playing the way we actually expect Kolo Muani to play. So I don't know what Mota has been doing in training with Dusan Vlahovic, but he looked unlike McKennie, like a player who had a lot of rest and was ready to go.
10, not 10 touches in the first half, Patrick. 10 touches the entire game, which is just really speaks volumes about that stretch of play for Juventus. But, about Dusan, while you mentioned him, one thing that jumped out to me was the Cagliari game in the first half of the season really stood out to me because he missed a couple sitters in that game, and we ended up conceding a late goal, a 1-1 draw in Turin. And I felt like the narrative was set perfectly to repeat today, because Patrick, talk us through that first half. It was dominant, but we only went into halftime up 1-0.
There were missed chances. I'll get to that. I want to talk a little bit about how they played. We mentioned a few podcasts ago about when Vega played, and I do miss him, but when he was in there, they would go to a back three of sorts, right? So obviously with Vega gone, we want Locatelli to be that distributor. There were times in the first half when possession was really, really nice, and Juventus utilized almost a back two and had a diamond midfield. I'm not sure, Zach, if you noticed, but Cambiasso sort of played a secondary 8 along with Coop Miners. Locatelli was playing back in his normal spot, and then McKennie was like beyond Vlahovic at times, because Vlahovic did come to collect the ball. So only one goal to show for it. Of course, we could have had a couple others. I thought Yildiz was electric in the first half, just couldn't bury the chances. I actually thought the inclusion of Conceição over Nico was a good choice for today. He just looked more fresh, and I really would have really liked one more to kill the game off in the first half. It felt like it was coming. We just weren't quite there, but possession was great. This is the kind of thing we expect from Thiago Motta's team: is high press, good possession of the ball, spread them out. I think it was about 70% possession in the first half or something along that line, which felt right. And I just would have wanted one more to close the game out.
It was exactly, by the way, 70% possession. So Damiano, talk us through the goal of on, I guess, a mediocre back pass, but it didn't seem like it was that bad, right?
Well,
From the midfield to the defender, right?
Yeah, first I want to say I can't believe Dusan Vlahovic played some defense, like pressed a little bit. Like that's already an eye opener. But I felt the goal was, very a la Ravanelli in the Ajax Champions League. The way he kind of like went around and just barely squeaked the pass. It took a lot of composure though. I thought that was pretty huge. Yeah, it was a great. It was Yerry Mina was just on Vlahovic the whole game too. So it was like it just made that much better. Like kind of got that one up on him. But yeah, it was a sweet goal.
I think I wrote down, because for those who listen regularly, I'm a handwriting notes type of guy during games, and I just wrote that we all really needed that. I think Dusan really needed that goal. I think the fans really needed to see, or really wanted to see, and I've been begging to see Dusan make that type of contribution. I think Thiago Motta really needed that goal. If he can get threat from both Colomwani and Dusan on a regular basis, what it might unlock to this offense, it just seemed to be the perfect way to start this game. And in fact, and I'm going to kind of want to walk you through some of these chances, it led a string of really good chances over the next 15, 20 minutes. We had, well, this was crazy, the Di Gregorio pass that Yildiz collected off his, with the header down to himself in the middle. And you talked about buried chances. I mean, he had two fantastic chances. That one, I want to maybe be more focused about the distribution. That's why we brought in Di Gregorio, wasn't it? For stuff like that.
He was goalkeeper of the year, and not just for his reaction time, but for playing the ball out of the back. I do want to give Yildiz an excellent shout out for that great weighted first touch off the head into space. That was a man who wanted the ball, right? That wasn't a 19-year-old. That was a veteran player who wanted the ball, and he did everything but bury the chance. I kind of was watching thinking nothing's going to happen here. It's just a long ball up. And then he took the route inside the player, and I'm like, that's a little different. He had that amazing touch, and I kind of like sat up in my chair a little bit like, oh, is this going to be like a worldie? Like, are we coming with a great goal here? And 10 out of 10 except the finish. And I was hoping that Juventus weren't going to rue that chance, because I didn't know what the second half was going to bring. It would have brought me to my feet. I can tell you that.
But that wasn't the only chance, right? Damiano. 2 minutes later, Dusan makes a really good run. into the box with the ball, playing like we haven't seen him play all year. Then the ball just ends up squirting out to Conceição right in front of the goalkeeper, and he can't put it in. He had Chico not only had that one, but 10 minutes later, McKennie put a cross right into the middle where Chico was kind of standing at the top of the six and whiffed the kick. What was with our wingers today, Damiano, that neither of them seemed to finish a good chance?
I don't know, man. Yeah, for some reason that's just how it went. I felt the same way. I felt like, man, Chico could have. Those two were pretty. It was pretty nice, man. I don't think he didn't see one of them. The one like the cross that I don't think he saw it to the last second or whatever. And it was like, but yeah, finishing is important. We got to put that in. We got to put some of those in. I mean, that 2-goal lead would have been going in half would have been better than the 1 goal.
Let me rephrase my question to Patrick a little bit, actually, because that's the Juventus side. But I think Caprile is a pretty decent keeper. What credit should he get for those 4 opportunities, 2 for Yildiz and 2 for Chico, Patrick, for getting his body in the way, or is that more so the striker not putting it where it needs to go?
A keeper who understands positioning. It just seemed like he's in the right spot. I think Yildiz, particularly on the one in the middle of the pitch when he gets it and tries to go through the legs, it actually was a good. I would go back post. Like I think it was the right choice, but the keeper was well read. There's something to be said, and Farhad has said this. I've been a long-time contributor, long-time listener. He says keepers tend to go prime Buffon against Juventus, and not that it was prime Buffon level, but some of those saves were Di Gregorio-esque recently, because it must be said, Di Gregorio's been amazing as of late. So it's only natural that, of course, Juventus gets some really nice chances and the keeper plays well, but still, you got to bury those if you want to. These could be season-changing goals compared to where we are in this, looking at where we are in the season.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about the implications of this game and the games around us on the table later in the episode. But I definitely agree. Just as a spoiler, on FOTMob, Caprile had the highest score in the game. Not that I put too much weight on that, but on those rating websites. But I think that's indicative of his contribution to keeping Cagliari in this game for really its entirety since we scored in the 12th minute. So crazy good game from him.
Even watching on the broadcast, CBS had vote for your man of the match or whatever it is, and he was actually listed first, above Yildiz, above, I think it was Vlahovic and Locatelli. I don't remember who the third one was, but he was on that list and worthy of a shout out. Of course, he's not on the team I'm cheering for, but game recognizes game. He played well.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we got the decisive goal. Dusan pulled one out of his head. He misses sitters, but then he wrestles for the ball. I want to talk a minute about that. How many times has this podcast referenced that Dusan, as a clinical striker, has to finish more chances? And then
every episode he plays.
Sure. And so then today you see a little bit of fight. You see a little bit of. I expected more of the celebration from him. He's known to, when after a drought or after some time away, to kind of get a little suave, a little arrogance back. I expected a little more, and maybe I just didn't see the enough images, but I expected more of a celebration from him, because it must be said, it was actually a really good striker's finish.
You talked rest with Dusan, but what influence, let me rephrase, do you think having the presence of Colomwani, an informed striker on the roster, is maybe the biggest driving force to the Dusan we saw today?
I've seen Milik score a hat trick. Okay,
that was a Copa game. We know those are a little.
Yeah, I've seen Milik score a hat trick, and what everyone wants to say about Milik, he's a professional striker too. He's had a fairly successful career, perhaps not Colomwani level of skill or desire or speed or whatever, but I've seen Milik get a hat trick. I've coached soccer if you're a professional player, if you're a player who knows what the game is all about, I think you're going to want to compete, right? So no matter who is there next to you, it's your job to keep that player on the bench if you want minutes. The only difference is now Juventus, since the Colomwani came in on loan, there is somebody there who is on form, who has been playing really, really well. started this run of 4 wins, right?
Mhm.
His skill, his goals started this run. So I think Vlahovic is thinking whether he's on the team next year or not, he's got to, or at the end of this year even, he's got to prove something. So I think that there's a little bit to it, but also there's a pride thing. He's got a little bit of that Ronaldo factor where I got to be the one to score goals, right? I got to impress not just the fans, but myself. So I think there's a lot going into it, but there was a weight lifted off me. I'm thinking, man, what if we can get 2 informed strikers, like you said in the beginning, Zach, and we can talk about the second half. They actually played together, because I think that could be something, and we'll save that. But if we could have 2 informed strikers, that would be a huge benefit to this team to finish the year.
Well, let's unless there's anything more to say about the first half, I think we covered the major chances as well as the goal. Fantastic physical effort from Dusan and a great finish. Let's talk about the second half because
Can I ask a
Damiano.
question about the first half, though?
Oh yeah,
Like,
hit us.
I felt like there was, because of the midfield that I talked about, right? They played in like this diamond formation. There's a lot of interchange between Coop Miners and McKenny. There were a lot of times where there was one-on-one on the outsides, and we saw Yildiz try to take advantage of that. We saw Chico at times. I thought there was a fair number of crosses today. Do you think that was intentional because Dusan was the striker, or was that just the way Mota lined up with the midfield being so compressed with those 4 players in there that the space was on the outside? So I'm curious what you guys thought. I was trying to figure out if this was a result of Calgary trying to stay in shape, or if this was a result of the way Mota wanted to institute his progression today.
Damiano, what are your thoughts?
I mean, part of it's due to like Cagliari. They kind of, defensively kind of, locked down and sat back a little more to kind of like, absorb the pressures. When we do that, does it's your more crosses or in order to get the ball in.
Yeah, Cagliari's
Zach?
setting a deep 5-4-1 with some, Luperto and the guys back there. They're big. They want you to play in the cross. They don't want you to play through the middle. And so they're inviting it. And on the flip side, you have Coop, McKenny, Dusan making runs into the box. Those are some pretty big boys on our side too. So I think we were happy to give it a go, especially look, we're up in the 12th minute, right? So it's not, we it's not like the 50-50 chance of a cross or whatever you want percentage you want to give it are actually work against us, right? If you're going to invite us to have an attacking try, let's go for it. And I think we saw our team approach different methods of attacking as the game progressed based on the personnel out there. Because we saw less crossing with Colomwani because of the nature of his attributes. Chico loves to cross. Weah loves to cross. Yildiz will alternate between crossing and dribbling or passing into the box. And so I think it was a fine tactic against a low block. You just have to show, I think, different threat or you become predictable. And I think today we maybe, and we're going to kind of kick it off, right, with Damiano, maybe we got a little bit predictable in that second half because as we've seen pretty frequently, we didn't have the same success attacking in that second half as the first, did we?
No, we not. The second pretty the first half, I'd say. I mean, it was pretty much. I was way that will tie the like all really. There's a couple stuff most this is not really too fond of. We flat. We came out flat. Yeah, so, I mean, it would be it would. I think we didn't get it, and fortunately, we did. We fortunately we haven't learned our lesson of coming in with some fire underneath and fire and get going.
Damiano, I just want to say you're breaking up a little bit, but I want to maybe pick off one thing that I heard you say, pass it to Patrick. It's about, we keep coming out flat. Patrick, what allocation of that flatness do you give to Mota, and what percentage of that do you give to the players?
I was in our group chat saying after the first goal, like, we're going to keep possession, we're going to keep pressing. And I was woefully wrong, sadly. I didn't want to be wrong. I felt this was the game we could have instilled more pressing and more possession. But I kind of saw, and I don't love this, using this as an excuse, but you saw 120 minutes in a Champions League game, I think, come out where the guys they tried relying on individual play in the second half. It was a lot of, let's see if we can beat them with one pass. I don't necessarily think that Mata wants to sit back and just idle on a 1-0. That was Allegri's thing, right? And I
Yeah.
think the players want to move on from that. I think Thiago Mata wants to move on from that today. I want to attribute it to legs and tired. I hope that's the case, because I'm frankly at a loss of ideas and words for why we had such a good success on the first half on the front foot, and then we decide that we're just going to sit back and invite a team. We know how this story goes. We've seen it so many times. We know how this story goes, and I did not want that story to be rewritten. There's too much on the line. All these games are really crucial. So I'm going to hope it was legs, and now that the schedule is maybe lightening up just a little bit, that this improves. But I did not have answers for that.
But I'm going to push back on that a little bit, because we've been bad in a lot of second halves, or at least come out flat in a lot of second halves this year. And we didn't play 120 minutes a few days before in those games. Like, I don't think this is just a PSV problem. Is this the regularity with what this happens? Is this on the, and when I mean the players, this is on like team leadership, Locatelli or McKennie say, guys, this is what we got to do. Is this on Mota? Is this on both? How do you apportion that? Because it's something systemic. And I'm just kind of curious in what you think that stems from.
And it's shocking to me because it seems like the style of play shifts. We talked about how the midfield was adapting with Cambiaso in it, and there was none of that. Like, we didn't even try to impose a will in the second half. So I'm at a loss for words. I know I'm the realist that says a win is a win, certainly, and 4 in a row is something that you have to look positively upon, right? 1-0 is better than 1-1, is better than 0-1, for example. But it is a little depressing when it seemed like you had your foot on the gas in the first half. You came out flat in the second half. And I'm not even sure flat's the right word. There has to have been some sort of mindset change, or, hey, we have the lead, let's take it easy and try to beat them on the break. I don't think that this, with all the quick players, that hasn't been successful working, as you mentioned earlier in the season. So it's just it's frustrating. It's probably the best word. It's frustrating.
Damiano, since Patrick doesn't want to answer my question, is it Mota or the players? Who's at fault for the regularity we've started flat?
I definitely got to be the coach at halftime. It's also up to the players. If the coach doesn't do it, you need a leader. You need somebody to stand up and take it on the wing. Like I said in the last pod that against PSV, you saw that in the they shan it to one side. Juventus, you have Locatelli, and you joking with and he's still nonchalant. And then you see PSV, they channel over to PSV. And basically it's totally all popped up, and for some reason we can't seem to get that in the law to fire us up.
I would probably agree. I've said this before. I think the coach, certainly on the second half talk, needs to make sure the team goes out with that right mindset. I think players certainly, it's not 100% coach, but I'd probably give it, I don't know, 60, 40, 70, 30 coach to players, and making sure that they're prepared mentally for what the game plan is moving forward. And I guarantee you the game plan isn't sit back and hope, right? It has to be more there. And I think that maybe it's not coming through because it has been a regularity with which we've seen this sort of flatness. But
can I ask a kind of an off the wall question here? I don't want to resurface Allegri, because that's gone. But you recall like hearing him on the broadcast consistently in the second half of games, just die the whole second half, and he was screaming players to move and move. And then I distinctly remember in the PSV match when the camera cuts to Thiago Motta, it almost looks like he's shell shocked all the time.
That might just
Does
be
any
his face.
okay, maybe that, and I'm just like, remember Allegri, the veins pulsating, the shirt coming off, right? You know that was, and I don't know what his instructions are during the game. Like, does he rely on in-game things, or is he like, well, if it doesn't, we got to try what we talked about at halftime? So I don't know if that's the case too, where if he's just so rigid when it comes to making in-game changes, because again, it's kind of deer in the headlights if that is his look or not. I want somebody to be able to adjust, not just with like substitutions and players replacing others, but if you need to switch something up, have the gall to do it. You know, whether that's a change with the guys you got in there, whether that's bringing somebody on, but it's you have to make a change sometimes during the phase of play.
Well, you do hear him yelling at the players, and you do see him giving sideline instructions when there's like a break and play and stuff. I'm not going to guess at what they're saying, but it's certainly likely that there is, you speak to players about the game like today. You could see him motioning when there were a bunch of subs from Cagliari that they had shifted their formation to the team, so so that the Juventus players out on the pitch could adapt to the new formation that Cagliari was posing. So you mentioned subs. We want to go there. I thought they were absolutely horrendous against PSV. I thought they were well done and well timed against Inter. So and over the course of the season, we're marked that some days Mota just gets it right. Some days he gets it wrong. Today was a little bit interesting because we saw another injury to Douglas Luiz while he was already on the field as a substitute. You saw us having to use Rui at left back for the first time in forever because Cambiasso went down with an injury, as well as Colomwani came on, Turam came on, and then Mangula had to come on for Douglas Luiz because we had no more midfielders on the bench. So we were trying to defend a 1-0 lead with a 4-2-4 formation. Patrick, how did you evaluate Mota subs today?
I've been clamoring, whether in my head or with the group, that I want to see Dusan Vlahovic and Colomwani together. Okay. And just not under these circumstances. This cannot be the defensive lineup, right, to try to close the game out. Those two should be penetrating and behind lines, playing balls into them, working together, not Colomwani defending on the wrong side of the 18. So a bit perplexing. Of course, Mota you can't really fault him for having to do something with Douglas Luiz, who must be said. I know people are going to hate on Douglas Luiz. I actually think he was kind of a spark plug. The ball didn't sit at his feet in the second half when he came on, and I noticed that in the first half that was the way we just played, but in the second half he was the only one that seemed to have a little bit more of electricity, I thought. So I was upset that he went out, but just kind of the nature of the way he's been going. However, a bit strange seeing Rui in a game like this, up one when you need to really close it out, and he doesn't have a whole lot of experience. Who else is he going to go to? That's a great question. But I could see that inexperience in this moment, especially when they were putting a ton of pressure on the back line. And he almost got into a situation where I don't remember what minute it was, but he was out there defending and somebody got by him. And I think Yildiz had to come back and help. And I'm thinking, like, if Yildiz didn't do that, Rui would have been cooked. So just strange. It ended up working out. I breathe a sigh of relief right now, but I'm thinking about it and just what about Savona? What about Costa, who's the new player? Is he not going to get any minutes?
Yeah,
That
that's perplexing. Yeah, I've got no answers on that one.
Any thoughts, Damiano? I know you're kind of cutting out a bit before, but any thoughts on the substitutions? I couldn't wrap my head around it. He's a little bit forced because of injuries and whatnot, but any other thoughts besides perplexing?
Yeah, I thought that was just unbelievable with Douglas to get injured, and then you're going out injured. But all in all, I'm happy he finally made this up to play Sean with Colomwani. But I was just dumbfounded. And I mean, timing just I don't know, I'm really big fan of Mo as substitute. Um, I Gula coming in, uh, I liked, but I mean, and the Bliss Luis one was about. And then just wants to like he's stuck on what why Niners even starting the game. That's I don't know. The substitutions are not. I'm not a fan of them. Substitution.
I mean, do you think that his plan was to sub Douglas Luiz out for Mbangula? I mean, like, there's no way that was his plan, right? It had to be somebody else. And Mbangula was probably the only guy left on the bench he was willing to play, and so he was forced into it. Like that, you're kind of forced into Ruhi. Like what? You put Weah at left back, Costa, who's not played any minutes at right back. I mean, like on some of them, right? Um, damned
I
if you
mean,
do, damned if you don't. Like, I mean, you got no choice, right? But
it goes back.
other
It,
ones, you
it
know.
kind of goes back though to not starting Turam, right? Like if something is really going on with Coop Miners, right, then maybe play him as a substitute, and then you don't have to worry about using Douglas Luis if he's really not fit. I think Turam looked fine. I know there've been some injury things with him, maybe minor knocks, but I think he and Locatelli could have played 90 today together, and then you wouldn't have had the issue of trying to bring on Douglas Luiz, who maybe isn't quite there. So I think Damiano has said in the beginning he wants Locatelli and Thuram to play together. I don't know why that's if Douglas Luiz isn't healthy, Coop Miners is out of form, beyond out of form. I don't know why that's not the starting choice midfielder or the double pivot that we roll with every single game. And now without Champions League contests, there's going to be a lot less rotation. I think it's high time you find your 11, find what sticks, and you work with it until somebody performs in training or somebody does really well in games that forces you to make that change. Pick your 11. There's no sense in rotating. If you got 11 healthy guys working together, if I'm the coach, that's what I'm rolling with because these contests are so crucial.
I fully agree with that, Patrick. And I think the best midfield combo, like if we talk from a pivot standpoint, all year has to be the Locatelli Taram partnership. Um, there were strings and it's moot now. Early in the year when McKennie, Fajoli played like 3 straight games of really good, but with Fajoli gone, Coop and Douglas Luiz, struggling for form and fitness. Um, it's sort of by default that you're left with a Locatelli Taram, but then maybe that undersells because they actually played really well together. Locatelli from more of the defensive and long passing, Taram from the progression through dribbling. So I think I have to agree with that, with both your and Damiano's assessment on that, as well as the hope that we see that with the limited number of games left more frequently. And speaking of Damiano, I see that he's had some technical difficulties. He had to disconnect. But I would be remiss if we did not highlight his man of the match. We were talking before the episode where we all each wanted to highlight our sort of man or men of the match as a case of Damiano's, and he really wanted to impress on his men of the match, which was the team passing. And I think this was a really timely call out from him because our passing was so bad against PSV. Today we had 94% passing accuracy when I think we were in the 70s against PSV. And I think it was really evident in our play, certainly first half, that when we're passing effectively, we are so dangerous when we have guys like Yildiz and Chico and the strangely informed Dushan ahead of guys like Locatelli who spraying the ball around. Patrick, who was your man of the match today?
I'm gonna have to say Gatti. He was probably the one against PSV that kept us close with all the clearances. It was an abysmal game. I'm against PSV. I'm not sure I could have picked a man of the match, but today, I will say this: Cambiaso, for the way they utilized him in the first half, was kind of the most pivotal or instrumental in the first half. But if we're talking the entirety of the 90 plus extra time, I think Gatti, he's actually been an insane beast in the air on crosses. I don't have a statistic or anything like that, but just from the eye test, he's kind of impenetrable, and it really makes you miss Bremer and having both of those players. Even Vega, when he was there, those are two big dudes. I just feel like Gatti's been imposing his will or trying to lead by example in the back. It doesn't really go in the stat book of like headers away from crosses. That's not really like an important thing. But in my opinion, the way Gatti's been standing out, I have to go with Gatti. I think it's a tough one because you want to give it to Dusan for coming back and scoring the goal when it must be said, he earned every bit of that goal, but I'm going to have to go with Gatti for the entirety of the 90 minutes.
When was the last time Gatti got a rest, Patrick? Because I'll be honest, usually when I ask a question like that, I have the answer. I legitimately do not know the last time Gatti had a break.
I'm pretty sure he started every contest this calendar year. So that tells you a lot.
I mean, he probably has started every contest since Bremer got injured. I mean, I cannot think of like who would we have even played in front of him? I think, obviously someone's going to correct me and say it was 1 year, which I appreciate because I don't know this off the top of my head, but his health and his physicality, and as we've talked about it, his effort, his grinta, every game has really been a positive force for our team. Despite, when Gatti sometimes goes marauding or when Gatti sometimes has a brain fart, which he does, but the effort he gives, the heart he gives, the health that he's had on this team has just been crucial. And so I really love the call out. Certainly in a 1-0 victory, defense is also key. I'm going to cheat and choose two man of the match of my own. You have, as somebody who's been so critical, and even when not being critical of Dusan, pointing out characteristics of his that do not necessarily assist our team, I think it would be unfair for me not to call out when he has an absolutely stellar game. And for 60 minutes today, we saw a Dusan that we haven't seen all season. He was 24 of 25 passing, scored a goal, 3 out of 4 long passing accuracy. He played largely a free role where we often saw Coop Miners and McKennie, especially McKennie, further upfield than him. He was on the right side, the left side. We saw an aspect of him, an effort from him that I just haven't seen before. And I looked at him for the first time all season and said, damn, that's a $70 million player right there. About 70 minutes in, he started looking leggy, and that kind of 60 or 70 minutes in, and he started looking leggy, and that kind of took, I think, a little bit of the luster away of seeing Colomwani and Dusan play together, because Dusan just didn't have. You saw passes that maybe first half Dusan would have been able to collect. Second half Dusan was a little bit tired, but his play for those 60 minutes was fantastic. And maybe my man of the match tied with Dusan is Locatelli. And this maybe goes back to Damiano's point. Locatelli was 95 of 106 in passing. 95 out of 106 in passing. That's more passes
73
completed.
minutes.
Yeah, not even the whole game. That's more passes that he completed today than his last 3 games combined. Both PSV games and his Como game. He just was in a situation, I don't know if that was him or what, but where he just does not have the crisp passing. 90% accuracy, almost 100 completed passes, 10 out of 15 long balls, 27 passes into the final third, and on the defensive side, 11 recoveries. This was the Locatelli that we've seen most of the season. That was the catalyst and the engine for our possession game and our distribution game. And I think, to go to Damiano's point about the team passing, is when Locatelli plays like this, our team plays at a different level, in my opinion. And so I just wanted to call out really good contribution from Dusan and highlight Locatelli's fantastic performance as my men of the match today. Patrick, any other questions or things that we missed on today's game?
I don't think anything that we missed. To me, it was a professional victory. As fans, you want to see them go for another goal. But at the end of the day, the realist in me again tells me that it's a 1-0 victory, but a victory nonetheless. The 3 points are critical. I know we're going to get into the standings a little
Yep.
bit, right, for the
Yep.
last few minutes, but -8 from the top, it's still a gap, but man, that single point gap feels a lot sweeter and a lot more perhaps more surmountable. I'm not advocating and saying that Juventus is going to finish top of the table, but there is a small potential glimmer of hope here, and you're the positive guy, Zach. So 8 is a lot more different than 12 or something like that. So let's get into the standings and what's to come.
Okay, so all right, you want Mr. Positivity here. Like I was talking with my dad. My dad's a big Juventus fan. He's like, so what are the chances we win the Scudetto, right? I mean, that's Mr. Positivity right there. So we got into it, okay, let's talk it. We have 26 games played. We played 38, 12 games to go. Okay, 8-point difference. That means we need Inter to lose 3 games of their last 12. That's probably unlikely considering they've only lost 3 in 26. But they have their Champions League rounds coming. Okay, so they're gonna get challenged in their squad depth, their health, and so forth. Napoli and Atalanta, certainly Napoli has been in poor form ahead of us, and Atalanta has looked fantastic like today, or completely flat like their Champions League games and a couple of their most recent Serie A games. So if we look just ahead of us, there's vulnerability there. Though the chance at a Scudetto, unfortunately, as I told my father, are extremely remote. Until they are over, though, why not pull for it, right?
Right.
I think, though, we also have to respect the competition around us. And this weekend was absolutely fantastic for Juventus when you look at the table of the folks around us. One, Lazio drew, so now we're 2 points clear. Fiorentina lost. By the way, I'll note in that game, Moise Kean suffered a horrendous concussion. He had to be carted off. We obviously hope the entire Juventus community hope he's well and recovers quickly from that. Milan lost. Bologna lost. So every single team that I highlighted a couple episodes ago who are competing with us for that 4th spot drop points, which was, in light of our victory, absolutely fantastic. We still have the easiest road to the end of the season from both of those, or not both those, compared to those 4 teams.
Right.
And so things are looking really good from the table standpoint. So Mr. Optimism on the Scudetto, I mean, the chances are still there. But when you look at just the teams that are competing around us for that 4th spot, it also looks really good. And with everything, how things gone, I just can't reiterate my point enough that I made 2 episodes ago, that there's absolutely no excuse that we don't finish top 4 now with what's gone around us. For January, we said was the most operative month. Everybody stunk in January. And so then we moved that, the most important month, to February. Well, we're 4 out of 4 wins in February. There's no excuse for the team not to keep this run going, not being in the Champions League, to lock down this 4th place, bring in that much needed money so that we can finish building out this squad and we can really challenge for the Scudetto, which would be my goal for next year.
Agreed.
All righty. So that's what the table looks like. But we have another midweek match, Patrick. Just really quickly, we are going to, I believe, host Empoli in the Copa. Empoli is a team that looks as in free fall as you possibly could be. I think they've lost 4 out of 5. They have played terrible. We just saw them earlier this month, put 4 by them. If we don't progress in the Copa against this Empoli team, that would be, I don't know, what word would you put to how bad that would be if we can't progress in the Copa against this Empoli team?
Disheartening.
No, you can do better than that, Patrick. That doesn't, I mean, just inconceivable, right? It's like they have to go in and do the professional job. Anybody can beat anybody, but we've won 4 in a row. They've lost 4 in a row in the league. It would be tragic. I don't know. Maybe my vocabulary is not big enough, Patrick, but that would be horrendous. Would it not?
Juventus started the run essentially in February against Empoli, right? In Serie A. So I'm a little curious if Mota is going to do some squad rotations here. I foresee we might see Mattia Perin. I'm not privy to knowing the starting lineups days in advance, but I'm wondering what kind of rotations the squad might make, knowing that the games in Serie A coming up are so crucial. I know people are torn at that, right? Because if you have something that works, you might as well keep rolling with it. But I almost wouldn't mind at this case with all the injuries, with people needing people the rest of the way, with getting a couple of rotation players in. However, I say that knowing that Juventus have been using rotation players for a long time this season, right? So
Wait,
I'm
what
not quite sure what he's going to
what
do.
rotation players? We've got no rotation. Cambiaso went down
who's left?
injured today. Vega's still injured. Kalulu's still injured. Is Savona injured? Douglas Luiz is injured again. Like, the only rotation we have is in our forward line, right? We got Thuram in midfield, and then our forwards. Like, that's it, isn't it? Like, it's kind of terrible. Maybe pull Odzic back up into the team, he from dominating in the next gen. Give Costa his first minutes. You got to respect your opposition. You
Right.
got to respect them despite Empoli's form. So would you go so far as to starting Costa? Do you have anybody else? Like,
at this point, I wouldn't be shocked to see McKennie playing center back. He's done everything else at this point.
Might as well.
Might as well line him up at defense. So I'm cautiously optimistic that because they're in such a free fall, Empoli, that Juventus can really take advantage. I'm cautiously optimistic, but my eyes are beyond this into the next Serie A games. It is momentum, right, to win Coppa Italia, and I think Juventus should be focused on winning every game. But my eyes are actually past this one, looking for the next Serie A fixture.
Well, the next fixture, just a real highlight, is Verona. Verona, who's sitting at 14th in the table. We played them, I believe, in the second game of the season. That was one of our 3-0. A really convincing win, but they're a team who's shown all season that they can steal games. They stole one today. I forget who it was against, but it was against one of our competitors for the 4th spot. They stole a win today, and so it's a game that we have to respect moving forward. I'm not going to overlook Empoli as much as I said how bad they are right now, and so I think we need to play with that same mentality. I think you called it. You got it for PSV, right? We got to keep the run going. Got to keep that form going. We might not be able to rotate, but I'm hoping for another dominant win there. And I know that the boys, us Turn Giants, have been talking on the back end to ensure we give you a post Copa episode as well, listeners. So with that, look, we love bringing you these conversations. Hit us up on Instagram, Turn Giants. Let us know what you want to hear. Give us some comments or feedback. And with that, I'll probably let you go, but we will talk to you hopefully after Empoli, if not after a beautiful win against Verona on the weekend, right, Patrick?
I need this. I need this. I'd said, hey, the best way to secure 4th is to push for 3rd. So I'm confident that Juventus continue to win and make it 5 in a row, Zach.
Push for 3rd. What are you going to be like my dad? Say push for the Scudetto, right? Right, Patrick? Just
if you push
care to the wind.
Yeah. If you're in first place, that means you're going to make the Champions League.
Alrighty. All right, you heard it here for your first, folks. Patrick has said we will win the Scudetto this year. Put it on the wall. All right, folks. Thank you so much for your time. We love bringing these episodes. We will talk to you soon. Have a good night.
I was caught in the middle